Laptop open on the counter, code compiling, toast pops hot, phone keeps buzzing, group chat screaming, who's on Slack?
Welcome back to the Neo Notebook Streamcast. It's your weekly home for MacBook Neo news, real world insight, and a community that's alive with Apple's most talked about laptop, the MacBook Neo. Great group tonight. We are recording this on the Sunday night of Memorial Weekend. So if you're watching this, you're probably seeing some weird configurations with most often Eric stuck in a car. And I'll let him explain that when we get to that. Dave's out at the lake house, and Brett just got home from Las Vegas. So he said the last thing he wanted to do was sit for another hour and a half after driving home from Vegas. So let's check in and see who's with us. We'll start with Dave.
Hey, it's Dave Ginsburg, IT professional and the host of the In Touch iOS podcast. Yes, I'm enjoying the Memorial Day weekend here at our lake home. This is just outside of Macstock. So, thanks for having me.
Eric.
Hi, I am, trying out the wondrous environment of a car, avoiding helping install an air conditioner in a window and eating a bunch of dessert. This just seemed a lot less stressful.
Brett.
I'm Brett Kennedy. I'm a 33-year Mac veteran with an interest in photography, videography, and traveling.
So, Brett, what did you do in Vegas? If you're willing to share.
It was not the typical visit to Vegas for us because we were there for a family event. My cousin's daughter, who lives out there, graduated high school, so we went out to celebrate with her.
Nice.
Well, that's cool. That's nice. And so you did this trip back all by yourself, or did you have people accompany you in the car?
No, we had, it was actually my dad was driving us. And so it was me, my mom and dad. And then we had to pick up one of my aunts who was going to the party with us.
Yeah. I have spent all weekend at home. And actually, I think I've got all of my work done at this point that I don't have to do anything tomorrow. So most of this, my last 2 days have been prepping for classes for next week and getting all of that material in line. The class that I'm dealing with, or one of the classes that I'm dealing with, requires me to this week do a lot of lecturing and a lot of content. So typically future weeks I won't have as much to prep. But I hadn't taught this course in 2 years, so I had a lot of prep to do. But my goal was to get it all done as much as I could, as quickly as I could, in order to be able to have just tomorrow to sleep and maybe watch old war movies on TCM. We've got some folks in the chat room, and Peter said he's here for his weekly dose of neo-ness. So thanks about that, Peter. And Oliver wanted to know, did Eric get kicked out of the house? I think it was from what he says, it was voluntary. If someone was putting in a heating or air conditioning unit in my house, I would volunteer to go sit out in the car too. So to kind of get away from the noise and be able to do his stuff. So it's fun to have everybody together in this format, and I appreciate the comments in the chat room for folks that are joining us. Lots of stories.
Yes, but there is the give and take for Eric. He's missing out on dessert too.
Well, what's dessert, Eric?
I think it was cookies and cakes from a bakery a few blocks away. But this way I don't have to lift the air conditioner to help install it. So I think it's worth it.
But technically you're in a car. Couldn't you just drive?
It's a good trade.
couldn't you just drive to the bakery a couple of blocks away and get the cookies and cakes and eat them yourself in the car?
Yeah, but they're closed now.
Oh, okay. Well, how about we do a show? Lots of news, tons of news this week, surprisingly, lots of articles, and I pared it down. But I will put whatever I can fit into the show notes for folks who want to check out the show notes after the recording. You can either see us at youtube.com/at the Neo Notebook, or you can pick it up on a podcast, the Neo Notebook podcast. Look for that. And all of the links will be in the show notes for that. I'm starting with an article that is about, it was interesting. It was someone who picked up a Neo Notebook at the beginning, and they had all sorts of concerns about it. And at 60 days, they went ahead and filed a review comparing it for what they believed it was on at launch. So interesting. This first section is going to be reviews and other things that people have tried it for. Basically, there were no surprises to this person in this article. What they thought might be a concern was a concern. In some cases, they were concerned about the chip. That really didn't seem to be a concern for them. It's proven to be stable, and the issues around the keyboard and the lit keyboard and things like that. Nothing has gotten worse, but the kinds of concerns the user might have had at the beginning has kind of stayed the same, but not gotten worse for them. I don't know if there's any comments particular on this article.
No, that's no surprise. I mean, the back of the keyboard is definitely going to be something that people are going to make comments of. I can tell you that because I was trying to sell this Neo to a neighbor that's here at our lake home here, and he was all ready to buy it, but then he asked about the back of the keyboard. So then I said, no, unfortunately it isn't. Okay, let's go with the Air. So I said, okay. Well, actually, it was a good deal because Costco had the MacBook Air M5, the base model with 512 gig of storage for $899. So
that's pretty good.
Nice.
$200 more than the top end Neo. So
okay. So when he gets the backlit keyboard, I want you to have him put his fingers on the keys and tell me what the keys are. Have him tell you what the keys are and how the lighting helps him know what the keys are when his fingers are on top of it.
I'll make sure I quiz him on that.
Okay. Another article, is the MacBook Neo worth it for gaming? I don't know. These articles sort of feel like setups that, of course, it's not a gamer machine per se. And Tech Times runs gaming benchmarks and finds the A18 Pro GPU performs better than the specs suggest because, again, they're on an Apple Silicon, because they're probably thinking how it's going to perform on a PC-based computer. And it's completely different memory management. But for the AAA games, they need more memory in order to do that. So it's not a real gaming machine for the right catalog, a non-starter for others. So you could use it for some casual and indie games, but not a replacement for a dedicated gaming aspect. So yeah, I'm checking. People are checking in the chat room. We've got Brian and we've got Craig in here, and Oliver mentioned that this is more rage bait articles. I don't know. They were gentle in this one, actually. Very gentle in terms of its possibility, but it does give some good benchmark information around it. This one from Gizmodo came out less than a week ago, just shortly less than a week ago. A new cheapo Intel laptop outperforms the MacBook Neo. Does that really matter? and Gizmodo examines a budget Wildcat Lake laptop that beats Neo on certain benchmarks, then asks the sharper question, does a benchmark performance actually drive purchasing decisions at a price tier? That, I think, is not only a good question for that Gizmodo asked, but do you think people in general pay attention to benchmarks when they go into a store? No.
Not really. I mean, your average computer user is not going to be thinking about that. Not guys like us who
Yeah.
look at benchmarking and performance, and I mean, they just want it to work. If they're using something like Adobe, if they're doing Photoshop or any of the high end stuff, yeah, you're going to notice it because it's going to take a little longer time to render. Now, granted, we've done plenty of tests with Final Cut Pro and with Adobe Photoshop, and even Adobe Audition. I think you tried it, Marty, to see what kind of performance you're getting on the Neo, and it was fine. But let's emphasize the word fine. It was fine, and it worked for what you needed. But if you're looking high performance and heavy rendering, no, it's not. This is not the Neo is not going to be working for you.
Yeah. Interesting. The other thing is that the comments that I think were good in this article that Gizmodo said that people don't buy generally for benchmarks. What they buy really for is the ecosystem integration. And that's what Mac OS has, the build quality and the brand. So that's what people will notice when they go to the store. And in that case, outperforming on some benchmarks doesn't really matter that much. It looks good on paper, but it leaves the reason for what people really buy a MacBook for, a MacBook Neo for that reason. So,
I think it's also to remember that you might get better benchmarks on some things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the amount of power needed to run the laptop matches. So the performance per watt matters as far as battery life. And if you're working in situations like in a car where I'm running off of plugged-in batteries and need to keep things going, I really appreciate the Neo basically sipping power.
Yeah. And this comes from Oliver. Exactly. Even higher end users care about what it is able to do, not what the score is it gets on a benchmark. So,
yeah.
Other articles that come in. This is where this week saw a lot of articles about competition and different computers, some that I had never even heard of, being put in comparison with the MacBook Neo, particularly around benchmarks and particularly around some of the hardware that's associated with it. And this came out of Macworld, and I love the title of this article. MacBook Neo is living rent-free in PC rivals' heads. That Macworld's David Price makes a sharp observation. The Macworld Neo has become the product every Windows OEM is designing against, benchmarking against, and pricing against, whether or not they say so publicly. Being a reference point for your competitors to find themselves against is a form of market dominance. The MacBook Neo has achieved it in under 2 months. Kind of cool article. And that coming out of Macworld, too. Yeah.
Agree with every word of that.
So we've heard about Lenovo. Lenovo introduces a new Wildcat Lake laptop globally to surpass MacBook Neo. It's the IdeaPad Slim 5i. Does that mean it's working with a Intel i5 chip? Launches with up to 16 gigabyte RAM, a 120 hertz display, upgradable storage, a backlit keyboard, and a battery 50% larger than the Neos, all in a lighter chassis. And I'm looking to see a price point on this.
I think it's still new.
Oh, okay.
They haven't released it yet.
They haven't released it yet, so they haven't released a price point on it,
Right.
which really means nothing. This is Lenovo's clearest acknowledgement yet that the MacBook Neo, not the MacBook Air or Pro, is the product to beat in this tier. And the next one is a computer company that I maybe should be ashamed, but I never heard of. Chuwi's UniBook. It's a $499 laptop chasing the MacBook Neo's crown. And it's got some interesting specs, or at least the spec sheet here is showing, of course, they're showing all the things that Apple's Neo doesn't have. But one of the big parts of comparison and contrast is the different multiple ports that it has within its build. So Digital Trend covers Chuwi's UniBook, a $449 Wildcat Lake laptop with a 14-inch 100% sRGB display and generous port selection. Potentially the first sub-$500 laptop to run Wildcat Lake Silicon. It beats Neo on price and ports. It runs Windows on Intel rather than Mac OS on Apple Silicon. It's a distinction that matters enormously to buyers of what the Neo was built for. And do we have? Yeah, we had a price point, $449. 8 gigabyte, 256 gigabyte PCIes, 3.0 SSD.
Yeah, I've never heard.
What do you think, Dave?
Either. I've never heard of this brand either. I went and just searched their name just to look on their website, and yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, this hasn't really been released yet. Another one of these things, because you're looking on their website, it just has some of their other products that they have. But I don't know. I'd be kind of leery. I'm not hearing about this product, and it's not really in the mainstream. I'd be skeptical at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not in the market for a PC.
No.
Yeah, I've got a lovely Dell sitting on the floor in a bag that I took from my office that will stay in the bag until I have to go back to my office, where it will sit on my desktop and not be used. So I'm not really in the market for anything PC wise with this, but it seems a little interesting. And then here's the one to crown all, and I think we've mentioned this before. Microsoft's planning to launch a 13-inch Surface laptop with Apple's MacBook Neo level RAM while charging $1,300 for the device. Sans keyboard. So.
But it's a tablet, of course. That's how Microsoft is with Surface. I mean, that they overcharge it because they think they can get away with it because it's a tablet-like device. Because you can use it without, you're using the Windows tablet mode, and it can be used as a tablet. I used to support those when we had them in our environment. There was a Dell, and they're horrible. Battery life is not great. Just overall design is questionable.
Yeah, I know when I go into a classroom and I see people with tablets or frankly any computer where the first thing they're doing is they're finding an outlet to plug it in. And I have some students that will come in and will without taking their laptop or turning it on, they'll take it over to a wall socket and plug it in and leave it there. Since they don't know, they're in competition with other students that are looking for the wall socket. To me, that's really sad. That's what laptops are supposed to be, or tablets, or iPads. They should be something that at least can be charged and sustained through a 2-hour class. Yeah. So I don't know.
What else you could say?
Yeah. What else can you say about it? I just don't, David, what's the attraction to these devices? They're coming out with a new Surface, and what makes people want them given the challenges that they've already have?
It just seems people are attracted to these tablet devices and want to be in the Windows environment. Windows is okay with the way the tablet mode works. I mean, it has the same types of styluses you can use like you can with an iPad, Apple Pencil. You've got, OneNote is very popular to use for note taking, and people living in the Microsoft ecosystem, it works really well with that. And that's that was one of the attractive things about Surfaces is, unless you get the Surface that's the actual laptop with a flip over screen, because I have those too. And actually, a lot of PCs these days have that mode where you can just flip the lid over, make it flat, flip it over. The keyboard's behind you, and then you have a tablet. But the nice thing is you don't want to have to feel that keyboard in your hands when you're using it as a tablet. Just like an iPad, you don't have to feel the keyboard. You go ahead and use it as a tablet. So I think people are just attracted to that in the Windows world. In the Apple world, you have, if you want a tablet, you get an iPad. You want a Mac, you get a Mac.
Yeah.
But who knows? With all the speculation with Macs potentially getting touchscreens, I just don't see it. But this is what Microsoft does. They want to have this type of product because they can. They go back to Dell, go back to Lenovo, and go back to HP. The top three PC makers. They dabbled in tablet technology, but they're sticking with laptops that generally, as standard, are flip screen tablets.
Yeah. Another reveal this week is Intel reveals Project Firefly to make a cheap Wildcat Lake laptop that rivals the MacBook Neo. And interesting in and of itself and this comes out of Yahoo Tech. And trying to make a budget Windows laptop look a lot less bargain bin. Intel is not just releasing chips, it's launched a platform strategy that they call Project Firefly. It's an attempt to give Windows OEMs a unified hardware blueprint for building credible MacBook Neo alternatives. Digital Trends reports that Project Firefly gives PC makers a common hardware playbook, mandating backlit keyboards, symmetric USB configurations. These are the things that are the complaints about the Neo, and tighter chassis tolerances that prevent Intel budget platforms left to OEM discretion. This is Intel admitting something publicly for the first time. Selling Wildcat Lake chips is not enough. The company needs to ensure that those chips ship inside hardware that doesn't embarrass itself next to $599 MacBook Neo. And that might be a message to Lenovo and Dell and Acer and I forget who the fourth. HP. Who are looking at making these Neo killers. Probably the big, any comments or any reactions, guys? Okay. Probably the big news of the week comes from Google. And we mentioned this last week without much information on it. There's more articles on it, but folks, the Googlebook has landed. Well, the book hasn't actually landed. The concept of the book has landed. Apple's most serious challenger yet. This is the story of the week. Google officially unveiled the Googlebook at I/O 2026. I don't know if you unveil something if it doesn't exist. Not another Chromebook refresh, but generally a new platform that is a fusion of Android, Chrome OS, and Gemini AI. And we'll get into that in a minute. That's loads of fun when you think about combining Android, Chrome OS, and Gemini AI. designed to own the same market as the MacBook Neo that we've just opened up. And there's some good information in the flagship blog introducing Googlebook, the official Google announcement, and some good information, at least from the marketing standpoint, about what it is. Designed for Gemini intelligence. But you get into the Verge article, and the Verge article gives a little bit more detail into it, and talks about various leaks about it. Google describes Googlebook as a new category of laptops built from the ground up for Gemini intelligence, combining Android with Chrome OS in a premium AI first hardware platform. Launch OEM partners Acer, Asus, Dell, and HP and Lenovo, as David mentioned. Target is fall 2026. The key platform features include deep Gemini integration at the OS level, full Android app support, and a magic pointer. Boy, you can go a lot of ways with that magic pointer. Contextual AI interface, and a signature glow bar LED on the device front panel. My understanding that is only going to be on the Lenovo device, or Lenovo was the only one that announced the glow bar. Strategy timing is notable. It arrives, with MacBook Neo. The Verge reports that the OS is a fusion, as I mentioned already. The browser and desktop concept is layered on top. Internally codenamed Aluminum OS. Google confirmed that. What?
It's ALOS is what they
ALOL. ALOS. Wow.
Like aluminum, AL.
Yeah, right. Well, it should be AI.
Job listings for leaked building references. That was what the code was in those listings.
Yeah, but one would, if you don't capitalize the L, then it looks like AIOS.
It does.
Which is maybe intentional in doing that, but they're calling it Aluminum OS.
Aluminum OS or ALOS.
Yeah, Aluminum. Yeah.
Aluminum is AL.
It's a code name, but not the final branding. Verge draws a comparison to Apple's. Google is attempting to unify the ecosystem, placed similar to iPad and Mac OS integration, where the phone and laptop share a common OS foundation. I think that's a stretch for Verge to say that it's the comparison is directly what's going on. Peter mentions that aluminum is the correct spelling.
It is.
And HP heat problem, hinge problem. Peter's mentioning all the problems with HP computers.
Yeah, we knew that.
So yeah. Besides the crapware that HPs have on them that you have to fight your way through. The real competitor here isn't the MacBook Neo versus the Googleware on hardware. It's Apple's intelligence versus Gemini. Yeah. The battle will be decided by which AI is more useful in daily life, not which laptop has better specs. Okay, so this is a point of contention. I don't think it's a matter of which has a better AI, because if I'm on a Mac or on an IO system, I've got an app to do the AI that I want it to do.
Right.
It doesn't have to be integrated. And I'm not selling that information. They're not gathering that information to sell it. So yeah.
So what I find confusing here is that we all saw the announcement a couple months ago that Gemini is going to be powering a lot of the AI features in Apple's next operating system that's expected to be announced at WWDC. So in that case, it would look like Google's already kind of won this debate if Gemini is powering everything in Android and on Apple's platforms too.
Yeah. And Peter has caught a distinction that Google, and maybe I missed it, Google Book OS is aluminum OS, not aluminum OS.
Right. Aluminum.
Aluminium. It's the Johnny Ive pronunciation of aluminum.
Yeah,
Right.
aluminium.
That's the UK pronunciation.
Yeah.
Okay, mateys.
I was just talking about this on the G-Men show, so it's fresh in my mind here.
Yeah. So I thought this article was probably the best of them, and it came out of PC World, and it gets to the point. Google Books aren't just Android laptops; they're a Trojan horse for Gemini.
Yeah.
And Computer World describes the UI as sitting between Android and Chrome OS, a modernized desktop-style Android environment similar to the large screen tablet concepts that evolved for traditional laptop conventions, and probably very similar to what is on the Galaxy XR in terms of its setup or arrangement. 8 questions in this article include the unknowns that will determine Google Books' competitive impact, which primarily is price, productivity app compatibility, keyboard and trackpad quality standards, and whether Gemini integration is generally useful or just marketing. The most pointed question for the MacBook Neo comparison will be, will Google Books ship below $599? If Google lands a compatible device at $499 or under, the Neo's price advantage disappears and the ecosystem comparison becomes the deciding factor. So the stuff with you wiggle your mouse and it immediately gives you Gemini to impact it just kind of drives me nuts. It's the mistake that that Microsoft made with their integration, I think, of everything with Copilot everywhere. So again, they're a Trojan horse for Gemini, and that tells you where your information's going and what happens with your information. So.
Yep.
So let's see. Neo in the schools. So yeah, MacBook Neo is in K-12 schools. And this article I pulled up primarily because the Jamf deploying. And I thought, Dave, you could add a little bit in terms of that, because I know you've mentioned that platform in terms of working with
every
various
day during the week.
at Center Enterprise. So, as this article is written, it's really for a vendor. It's a useful article. It covers the real deployment questions that determine whether MacBook Neo rollout succeeds or stalls with configuration, security, and shared device workflows. Dave, what do you got to say about this?
Yeah, I mean, Jamf. If anybody doesn't know what Jamf is, it's a mobile device management system. It's been very, very, very well known in the enterprise and in education especially, to manage iPads as well as and I'm managing both iPads and Macs in the environment I work in. But this is good to see. I mean, Jamf is very good. This is like a white paper ebook that someone put together here. So these education teams can get a head start of deciding, is this going to work in the K through 12 way, and got to have the right device, and going through, and the Neo is going to be a perfectly good thing to have. I mean, some education was already using MacBooks in the past. A lot of teachers were, but that's the problem, is you only saw it generally in K through 2, K through 3, maybe junior high, but then in high school you'd see them have PCs or Chromebooks, mostly PCs in most cases. So this is just a good way of this showing, and I think Jamf was taking advantages, because Jamf's in the business to make money, and if they get they get these schools to manage these MacBook Neos in their environment. That means it's increases the per seat cost, and the return on investment for the schools is going to still be so tremendously better than having these schools to have Chromebooks and managing it in the Google Workspace, because which I don't have too much experience with that, but I've got people that come to MacStock all the time that do that every year, all the time. But I know it's not fun managing those suckers, especially wiping the devices, getting them back into play, and where Jamf seems to work well. I'm not sure, Brett, if you work with this at all in your job, but it is an amazing tool, and this is smart on Jamf's part to talk about it.
No, my work environment is all completely Windows based. So,
Okay,
yeah.
got it.
Okay. Well, I think the article that's been pushed around a lot this week, we mentioned it last week. I think, Dave, you found it on even on In Touch with iOS before it hit last week on our show, is Chromebooks dismissed. Kansas City schools go all in on the MacBook Neo. And I think as we brought to the discussion last week, Kansas City Public Schools is replacing 30,000 PCs and Chromebooks with the MacBook Neo, the largest single institutional Neo deployment reported to date, and a data point Apple will certainly use in its future educational marketing. A $599 price point has been broken through the psychological and budgetary barrier that kept Apple out of a large public school district technology planning, a barrier that even the iPod and iPhone, during the iPod and iPhone eras. So pretty cool. Pretty cool that it has broken in, and we'll see more and more of that in school. Any general comments from the group?
Yeah, I will add that it's going to be a mixture of MacBook Neos and iPads. There are some schools that, especially K through 2, K through 3, the younger kids are given iPads to use as opposed to MacBooks. So you'll probably see that in the mix. But that will just expand one of the larger school districts in the United States, in Kansas City. It's a big city. It's not Chicago, but it is a big city, and that's a lot of MacBook Neos that they already already placed a big order as it is to start. So.
Yeah, the original article I saw on this did say that they were going to be doing iPads through like K through 3.
Right.
So the 30,000 items included their K through 3 iPads and their Neos
So this is
for upgrades.
Upgrade to the later iPads, because they hold them for a few years, and generally I think they buy the low end iPads for the most part.
Right.
And that goes. It looks like Eric is driving now, as I'm noticing.
Yeah, and he
I think he found an open bakery.
And he has a glowy face. He's glowing by the dashboard light. I noticed that too. And he's making dramatic pauses. You need to watch the video, folks, just for days like these. Yeah, Eric's got his background moving. Peter paid attention to that. And I think in Brian, who I know works in a school setting, as we all know, I think this is the first of many districts that will be switching to Mac OS. Eric, your mic's on. You've got something you want to add?
Just that, being able to have both iPads and Neos, Macs, and have all of them managed in kind of a similar type system, it gives you a lot of flexibility. And having something that is sturdy, it has replaceable parts and components, is easy to maintain, is just a plus. So I think Brian's right. We'll start to see this more and more.
Yep.
Yeah. So let me jump on to another area. We have a couple of more pieces before we get into the topic for tonight. which is a quick topic, but it was something that popped into my head, and I thought I'd be curious to see what your response to that is. First of all, there are some articles talking about over the last couple of weeks about Apple kind of using faulty chips as big business. That this is a business model that Apple should continue to do and continue to use. I think Apple uniquely is in a place where they can do that because they have all of their chips they're managed now through Apple instead of going to different vendors and getting AMD or getting Intel's or getting whatever is coming out, that those other computer people who produce those computer laptops or desktops wouldn't necessarily have the same backfield of it. But I don't think that Apple is using this as their way of managing their devices. They're not going to be dependent on bin chips. However, I think it was this article, this article that is 9 to 5 Mac came out last week, and it talks about bin chips in other Apple products. Wall Street Journal reported highlights of further 5 products using bin chips. The A15 Bionic is used in the iPhone SE. The A17 Pro is used in the iPad mini. The A18 is used in the iPhone 16e. The A19 is used in the iPhone 17e. And the A19 Pro is used in the iPhone Air. So, they do have a hardware stream, I think, for these. Any other thoughts?
I think he pretty much summed it up. I mean, that's the reasoning. One of the reasons why Apple did this. I mean, they had a bit abundance of these chips. I mean, you're going back to a chip that was used in a 16, we're at 17. That was last year, when 2024 came out, and about a year and some change now. So they had surplus because the 16 was a pretty solid seller during that time. Then they moved up when they got to the 17. So it looks like this is a smart move, if you think about it the way it's described, because those chips are going to be around and have surplus of stock that they can continue on like this. And look, maybe the next Neo would be going to the A19 Pro. Who knows?
Yeah.
And this is a strategy I really appreciate too, because they have a surplus of these chips that are binned but are still perfectly usable, but just not in as high end of a product. So if it's already produced and it's already sitting in the warehouse, you might as well use it. And it reduces the waste that would come along if they design some other chip for some other specialty product. Instead, they can use something that otherwise might have hit the trash. And so instead it goes out as a new product.
Yeah, I'll mention another article that was grouped together here, how the MacBook Neo has forced Windows and Google to up their budget laptop game. And this comes from a South African journal called IOL. And just an interesting article talking about how now the biggest impact may not be Apple's market share and gains. It may be what the Neo did to every laptop sold by every competitor, a rising tide disruption that benefits the consumer across the entire market. So interesting there.
Makes sense.
A whole bunch of 3 articles that I managed to pull about hacks, mods, and extreme cooling. I have always thought, why you got a new computer? Why hack it? Why mod it? Why try to lower the temperature of it? But, to each his own.
Not my cup of tea either.
Yeah, it's sort of, this is cool. Whatever gets them to the table to eat is fine. And we're seeing more and more of this. We're seeing more people pushing the limits on it. So Hackster.io, what's great is we're starting to see these articles show up from not just typical Mac journals, but you're starting to see it from journals like Hackaday and Hackster.io and boingboing.net. One of, so these are really dedicated towards folks who want to play with modifications, and that's cool. I never was into overclocking, all that stuff that you can do and could have done and still can do, I guess. But to each his own. So laboratory results, no real user could replicate with some of these things. Salem Techsperts achieved a 41% performance boost by replacing the Neo's passive thermal management with an active cooling system. Now, the active cooling system you can't see this, you can see it in the picture. It is a big-ass fan. I mean, I've seen these things at the end of hallways when they flood to kind of get air circulation through them. And so, yeah, that was the active cooling. That got a 41% boost by replacing the thermal management with an active cooling system. Pretty funny, pretty cool. And Brian comments, it goes back to using the right tool for the right job.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brian. Some other hacks is unlocking the true power of the MacBook Neos. Again, this is another article showing the big floor fan that you can use to increase 20 or more percent performance with accessible mods. And then somebody added a water cooling system. I had a student come into class, and she has a MacBook. And she sat through class with the MacBook with the hinge pointing up and the keyboard and the screen pointing down. So it was kind of sitting that way with the hinge up and a little bit open. So I said, what is going on? And she said, well, I put this in my backpack with my water bottle, and my water bottle was not completely closed. And so I didn't bother to check with her. But I will check with her when I see her on Wednesday if that worked or not for her. It wasn't a MacBook Neo. It was some type of MacBook Air from what I could tell. But if you're into water cooling, this is an article that describes, besides throwing water on it, and it has a video that shows how to set this up with water cooling if you want to do that. So let me see if I can get some of this going. So they disassemble it first. They're talking about the CPU. Putting a heat sink on it.
It's quite the contraption there.
Yeah. Liquid cooling radiator is what this device is calling these showing.
Where the heck you put that? On the laptop.
Yeah, you put it on the outside. And then the hockey puck that's at the end of it either cools it, pulls it through. It flows liquid through the hockey puck.
Okie dokie.
Yeah, boy, that's fascinating stuff. But, like I said,
What a way!
to each
What
his own.
what a
I've
way
got to
to
shut this.
increase the portability.
Yeah. Just to lug that thing
Yeah.
around.
Yeah, well, they're not doing this for portability. They're just doing this to see how they could push the system with it. So that article was in Boing Boing, and again, I'll have that link in there. A bunch of things coming from the forums, comments from folks coming from a MacBook, coming from a Chromebook. Now that's an upgrade. Eric, you, I think, shared this in the link, and it's a Reddit post. And the person talks about and gets responses from folks about the shift from a MacBook, from a Chrome to a MacBook Neo. And then this one, Eric, you put this in. I know you're not driving, but you're being driven. Charged my MacBook Neo up to 80% before shutting it down. When I opened it up, the battery was at 83. And they were a little confused about this. They said battery life is the most important feature for me since I love going to relaxing places to do my writing. I didn't want a hassle of limiting my choices by choosing a place with an outlet, and gladly the MacBook just gets what I need. Eric, do you have any? Can you open up? Do you have any comments on this one?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is that there are a lot of people that are obsessing way more than they should about how to charge and discharge a battery. There were a couple studies that were done, and even Apple, kind of in their documentations a while back, was kind of saying, don't let it discharge below 20%. Don't use it past or don't charge it past 80%. Um, and as a way to kind of maximize the battery. Obsessing over that to the point that you're worried that the charge is a little off, that's going way too far. And when they've done other studies to kind of look, well, what happens over the course of a year if you don't follow any of the rules versus following the rules, and in many cases there really wasn't much of a change. The hardware just performed well. If you really abuse the battery a lot, you can always get an external like a phone charging battery that you can plug in to give yourself a little more time. In this particular case, they were worried because they were really trying hard to stay within the 20 to 80%, and the numbers showed differently. And the numbers are sort of an estimate. They were also doing some shutting down of their machine. And when the machine's shut down and powered off, then some of the power management stuff doesn't work the same. It can't monitor itself. So, a lot less obsessive shutting the machine off. Let it just kind of work. There's a software setting to say when it's just plugged in, only let it go to 80%. It's a guesstimate. It's just rough. It doesn't have to be exact. It's not going to fall apart overnight if you're a little bit off. If you ignore it totally, you will still have pretty decent performance. So, maybe reduce your worry, and you don't need to be quite so anxious about hitting all of that exactly.
Yeah, I have a solution to the battery ramping problem. Just replace the device every year with the next year's device, and then you never have to worry about how long your battery is. Yeah, it's like you lease the device. You just trade it in every year like a car.
Yep.
And that works. I get a little frustrated sometimes when it limits my battery charging because I don't want to go in at 80%. I want to go in at 100%. And so I had a little trouble finding that way to change that or fix that. Peter did mention in the chat, I replaced a 256 gigabyte M2 SSD from my Neo's backup drive, and it came with a couple of strips of the thermal pad. I was not tempted to use it to cool the Neo processor. Although, similarly, I had the same thing when I got an external drive and then bought the SSD for it.
Yep.
They sent thermal pads along with it if I wanted to use that or include that.
Or paste.
Yeah, those kind of things. So that kind of wraps up the articles. Like I said, there were tons of articles on the show notes I sent out there. I actually deliberately shortened them because there was just too much to manage with it. So you've got some, I think, key articles if you want to check the show notes after we get the production up of it. The show notes will have links to these articles that we talked about, and you can go and take a look at the articles. If you want to know how to cool mod your notebook, or your Neo book, MacBook Neo, the article will be there that'll show you how to do that. And have some fun with it if you want to do the mod. But I'm not taking responsibility for when it breaks. The topic for today is simply, have you seen other MacBook Neos in the wild?
Yeah.
Okay, Dave, you spoke up first, so tell us about where you've seen them or what it's like. Or
I've seen a couple people out there that've had them. I asked them how they liked it, and they were absolutely thrilled to death with it. It's not been a ton. I just like the maybe one or two so far. There's been lots of enterprise testing of them. I'm hearing stories about that. It's not probably going to be a device that's going to be good for the enterprise, just for base performance and how things get locked down and what has to happen with it. So I would tend it out that it's going to be a very popular model, other than maybe the executives might want it for that. But even that, you get concerned if you have a CEO or somebody at an executive level is using this MacBook. They may not be happy with the performance, so you don't know. Even though they're not doing a lot of stuff, but they want the best. So, but overall, yeah, a couple people I saw had them, and they're enjoying them.
So I'm going to ask you this question. I want to hear from other folks the same sort of question in general. But if you spotted one in the wild, which color would make it the most recognizable as a Neo?
Oh, for sure, citrus.
Yeah,
I would know that. Maybe blush, but blush is pretty close to pink. But you don't see too many Macs in pink anymore. At least I don't know if they have them. And I don't think the Air, though. Of course, the Pro doesn't have it, or the Mac, the Air. But I probably think that. And then silver and starlight. Those are pretty cool colors. So that's what I have.
Yeah, I'll answer, and then I'll turn it over to the other two guys. I'm in a classroom, and before the semester ended, after the device came out, I had one student who had it in the classroom, and I recognized it, and I said, because she had it in indigo, and I said, "Is that?" And she goes, "Yeah," and she had just gotten it. Ironically, she's taking the same class. She's taking a different class from me, but this summer, and she still has it. And she said something went wrong with it. Terribly wrong. And I can't remember what it was, but it was not a damage issue, because I said, "Oh, you need to take that in." And she goes, "Oh yeah, I already took it in. They're going to replace it completely for me," because it seemed to be a faulty issue with the device. So yeah, but indigo was what I saw. But now I'm like, when I walk up and down the row, and they all have their laptops out, I'm kind of now paying attention to see what they have as devices. And being a bit colorblind or color dumb, citrus is the easiest. I agree. Part of the reason I think I got my first one as a citrus was because I wanted people to know this is not some other kind of netbook. Just the same reason you bought a orange phone, Eric and David. But citrus is the obvious easy one. I had trouble discerning between what was a midnight MacBook and an indigo Neo. Walking up and down, I had to do a double take on one to figure out that it was a MacBook, but it wasn't. a Neo, and it wasn't an Indigo Neo. So
But
in the chat
that
room,
midnight color is pretty dark. So
yeah. Peter says a strawberry G3 Mac, is suggesting that. I haven't seen many more, but it's summer, and I don't expect to see more until the fall, really, students coming in with it. Limited classes, size and things like that I'm dealing with. Brett or Eric, do you have an answer to this one?
Yeah, I have seen one MacBook Neo in the wild so far. Up until the beginning of May, I was a regular commuter on the commuter rail system here. And on one of my last days taking the train to and from work, I did see one other passenger on board with their MacBook Neo out on one of the tables doing looked like some word processing work on it or something while they were taking the train home that afternoon. Didn't get a chance to start up a conversation with them about, if it's like a work owned machine or if it's their personal. But yeah, so far definitely saw one in the wild. It was a silver MacBook Neo though, and but I recognized it from having the keyboard and the color matched keys on it that weren't lighting up like any other Apple laptop. Yeah, so that was my one instance of seeing one in the wild so far.
So the unlit keyboard is a feature, not a bug, is what you're saying, because you're able to identify Neos that
makes
way.
It noticeable for sure.
And did it have a case on it? Did you notice, or was it without a case?
No, I think they did the same thing I do, where I don't have any sort of hard shell case on mine, but I do have my sleeve like right here that I keep mine in when I'm traveling. And I think they just had a sleeve to put it in, but not necessarily like a hard shell case that's on it all the time, even when it's in use.
Yeah, I have a hard shell case, and we've gone through this discussion before. I slide it in and out of the sleeve, and Dave has seen the sleeve that I use, and it's kind of fuzzy and soft, and I'm thinking maybe I just need to take the case off of it at this point. It's not going to add any extra protection when it's sitting on the desktop in the teaching, when I'm teaching. So, yeah, we'll see. Eric, boy, it has gotten dark quick from where you are. What's your story? You've seen these things in the wild. You do coffee shops. So.
Yeah, I've seen one or two in coffee shops. Couple of times coming out of the Apple store, I've seen people who also had Neos. Coming in, I had people asking for a Neo and then ending up with a MacBook Air, because at the time there weren't any Neos in stock. And maybe 3 or 4 people that are interested in a Neo, they just haven't gotten there yet. They're sort of planning. They're in the middle of backing up their old machine and scheduling time when they're not going to be quite so busy so they can do the swap.
I just want to mention MacStock, macstock.com, macstockconference.com. Check it out. Brett will be there. I'll be there. David will be there. Eric will be there. David and I will be doing presentations there. But if you don't know what it is, go to the website, macstockconference.com, and take a look at the conference. There's some great stuff going on. July 9th, they're going to have an eCam training. July 10th, 11th, and 12th is the full conference where there's going to be speakers and all sorts of great stuff. A great conference if you haven't been to one, because it's a good size, where you'll get to meet everybody, spend time with folks that you want to spend time with, and it's a good community. So take a look at it. If you choose to go and choose to get a ticket for MacStock, put in Pod Talk as a code when you check out, and you'll get $50 off just for putting in Pod Talk. Again, macstockconference.com. And I don't know if you guys have anything you want to add in on that. I just wanted to get that in for folks to take and check it out.
No, I think they got the good gist of it.
Yeah. So let's find out where we can find you. We'll start with David.
Well, you can find me at In Touch with iOS, intouchwithios.com. YouTube channel is youtube.com/intouchwithios. Just posted a video of last week's episode, edited version. So I'm going to start doing that more here. That's new. As well as there was a good episode with Don McAllister talking about Screencast Online days and his new app, the Wedding Player. Mondays, Vision Profiles with Marty and Eric. Tuesdays, Mac Voices Live with Chuck Joyner and Marty, Eric, and the rest of the gang. Thursdays, we record In Touch with iOS. Fridays on the Mac Show, the British Tech Network. And you can find me on socials at Blue Sky Mastodon at DaveG65. Thank you for having me, Mark.
Thanks for being here, Dave, especially on this weekend where you're at this really nice lake house, relaxing, and you're checking in and doing the Neo Notebook, so I appreciate it. Eric,
No problem.
what about you?
Okay, I can be found on Mastodon at eabolden@mes.to. Otherwise, Sundays on the Neo Notebook, Mondays on Vision Profiles, Tuesdays on Mac Voices Live, and of course Thursdays on In Touch with iOS.
All right, Mastodon is my social media of choice these days. You can find me bkennedy at twit.social, and the only podcast I am exclusively only on the Neo Notebook on Sunday nights. So I will be talking to everyone next week.
So he hasn't quite caught the bug yet. However, let me tell you, I am so excited that Brett, you've joined us on this, because it's like having a new friend, you know. It's, although, you know, we've met through MacStock and all of that. And you're the reason for this whole podcast, because you badmouthed me, not badmouthed me. But you said Marty probably will make a podcast out of it, and sure enough, we did. And I said, we got to have Brett. And so I hope you're enjoying this, and because we're enjoying having you here and being a part of this. You can find me on here. Go ahead, Brett.
Oh, I was just going to say, just tying it back to the MacStock promo we did. If you want to go to MacStock, I mean, just this, you know, kind of joking around with your friends kind of thing is exactly what you get there. And it's super fun. And now I get to do a little bit of it every Sunday night. And then outside of just our one weekend we get in July.
Yeah.
There you go.
And you get to MacStock, and people will say, hey, you do that podcast.
That's going to be a mind-blowing experience for me, I'm sure.
I'm going to coach a few people. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. Well, that's what we need to do.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we need to salt the audience and say, go up to that guy and, you know. So yeah, you can find me Sunday nights on the Neo Notebook with this great group talking about the MacBook Neo. Monday nights with Vision Profiles, 9 p.m. Eastern Time live stream with Eric, Dave, and Daniel. Tuesdays on Mac Voices, 8 p.m. Eastern Time with Chuck Joyner and gang. Thursdays with Dave on In Touch with iOS, again, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, to catch that live streamed. And then Friday morning on the Mac Show on the British Tech Network. So check that out. Everything I'm involved with, just go to the website, thepodtalk.net. You'll find links to the different podcasts and different streams. You'll also find other podcasts that are there that are too numerous to mention. to take up the rest of your evening with. But some fun stuff, so check them out. Again, thepodtalk.net. You can find me at Gencius, Gencios, at Blue Sky and Mastodon. Thank the group for doing this on a Memorial weekend. Eric's looking darker and darker. It's sort of like if he put his face really close to the thing, it would look like one of those horror pictures. What is it? Well, yeah, that one. Now start crying. Have a tear come down the side of your face.
I was thinking he kind of looked like the music video for Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah, he just needs three other heads around him. But yeah,
exactly.
I get that. Boy, that's scary, Eric. I should not have asked you to get that close to the camera. But thanks to everybody for doing this. And I'll be up editing this and getting this thing. Eric, stop it. Thanks for watching the Neo Notebook. New episodes drop every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube. And spread the word to other neophyte users, and we will catch you next time.